We have just heard from the White House after President Trump sounded off again about the raids involving his personal attorney and the Russia probe.
The president certainly has been clear that he has a very deep concern about the direction that the special counsel and other investigations have taken. This investigation started off as Russia collusion, of which there was none. That has been very clear that nothing has come up over the last year, and the president has spoken at length on this topic. While the media continues to focus on this, despite the fact that there's been no evidence after a year, we're going to continue to stay focused on the issues.
This morning, the president fired off another furious tweet calling the Russia investigation fake and corrupt, headed up by all the Democrat loyalists. He has said Mueller is most conflicted of all except Rosenstein, who signed the FISA and Comey letter. No collusion, so they go crazy. As the president fumes, some lawmakers are trying to get a bipartisan bill passed to head off any attempt by the president to fire the special counsel. Sarah Sanders said yesterday it is within Mr. Trump's jurisdiction to do so.
I think that the president has been clear that he thinks that this has gone too far.
Does the president believe he has the power to fire special counsel Robert Mueller? Does he believe that's within his power?
Certainly believes he has the power to do so.
All right, Kimberly, let's start with the raid that we didn't get a chance to talk about the other day. It looks like they've been investigating Mr. Trump and now President Trump for almost 2 years. They've found no evidence of any crime nor any Russia collusion evidence. And they're now going off into his personal attorney to, I guess, look for payments to Stormy Daniels. And now it looks like it's an FEC violation. Where do you think that's headed?
Well, can you imagine, though, when at the inception where this investigation was supposed to go and now where it has traveled far beyond what the original initial scope is? Now, if you come across something while you're doing an investigation, that's one thing.
Right.
But nevertheless, there's been such kind of a wide swath and cast here trying to get anything that they can, it seems, in terms of trying to bring something against the president through Michael Cohen, et cetera. Obviously, they're not going to overlook if there is any wrongdoing. But nevertheless, let me tell you something, because I had a case where I prosecuted for homicide 2 attorneys. Very complicated to do because all of the things in their house when we had the search warrant issued have attorney-client privilege on them. They are privileged, they are confidential. You have to get appointed a special master to go through all of those documents to make sure that you are not taking anything improperly.
The clean team, right?
And here they refer to it as a clean team. Exactly. So they had to go through his hotel room at the Lowe's, okay, his apartment, and the office. So they got a judge to sign off on this. They have to have, and they better have, some really compelling probable cause and evidence to be able to support this kind of stuff. Because every American, doesn't matter if you are a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, leaning Green Party, whatever you want to do, this can happen to you as well. The safeguards of the law exist for a reason, so they will not be abused to protect the rights of American citizens. Guess what? Including the President of the United States and his personal legal counsel. So from here, let's see what they're able to come up with. This is very aggressive and heavy-handed. There isn't any legal scholar that I've listened to that doesn't, agree that this is an aggressive move and really unprecedented.
Yeah, Alan Dershowitz the other day said that the constitutional rights of Michael Cohen were violated. People are saying this is a little unfair when you look at how Hillary Clinton was treated. Michael Cohen's been cooperating with the special counsel. He's produced almost 1 million documents, and then they raided his house. Hillary Clinton shredded a lot of documents and was exonerated. So people think there's a little bit of an unfairness factor here, Dana.
Yeah, perhaps. And the DOJ's Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, is investigating that piece.
Right.
The Michael Cohen himself said yesterday on television that the FBI was very courteous and respectful. He had no problem with that. He said it's not pleasant. He doesn't like it. But there was all that. Then you find out about the process and the high bar that you have to clear with a judge and others, including political appointees like Rod Rosenstein that have to sign off on this type of thing. And if I don't know if it really is all about Stormy Daniels, I have no idea. But that whole payment situation is such an own goal. And whatever happened with the Wall Street Journal finding out the information in January, issuing that story, then she comes forward and all of this stuff is coming all together. I know that all of this stuff happened before the election.
Right.
But if they brought it into the presidency.
Right.
And so I don't know what all they're going to find. I think that obviously the country has a lot going on with many different things, like we're going to talk about in the next segment, of possible military action against a really bad actor. But I also think that the system, looks to me, is working the way it is supposed to.
So I guess, yeah, on a technicality, you're right, it is. But, I mean, if you make a payment, Greg, to someone for $130,000 in the midst of a campaign, and you don't report it to the FEC, I guess that's some sort of campaign finance violation. You could serve up to 5 years in prison and face $25,000 in fines. That would probably be how they're trying to squeeze Cohen, maybe to flip Cohen on Donald Trump.
Yeah, perhaps. I think, and it didn't something similar with Obama and a campaign violation he had to pay a fine for, but you can look that up if you want. Look, you brought up Dershowitz briefly. He's no fan of Trump. He voted for Hillary. He doesn't even think, I don't even think he thinks Trump is a good president. But I haven't seen one person disagree with Dershowitz without first impugning his motives. And that's always a sign for me that they can't argue with Dershowitz if you have to go straight to insulting him, like what I think was Toobin said to him. It was a couple of weeks ago. It said, like, what happened to you? That's when you know you're winning. But here's the narrative. So you got this outsider, right, who's elected to disrupt the system, and boy, does he disrupt the system. This is a truly radical presidency, and we're watching it all over the place, from North Korea to what's happening with China and everything. The system is disrupted. The media is convulsing. The Democratic Party is wandering in a haze. So the opposition is going through all their tools to unseat this guy. And they find this one weapon that they weren't originally looking for to remove him. And it's something that happened before the election. Nothing I've said here is false. That's exactly what's happening. We had a radical elected to the government who has disrupted the system, and now there's an opposition trying to unseat him with something that happened before the election.
They tried to do it with the Access Hollywood, too.
Right. Now, the public is going to sense this. If this is why I have to wonder if the anti-Trumpers are thinking this all the way through, because the public will sense that this is a political coup using past personal behavior, and this is going to turn Donald Trump into a folk hero, a combination of Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan, because he's going to appear to be the victim, because you're taking him out not over policy, you're taking him out over personal behavior that occurred prior to the election. Right. If you hate Trump, get a load of Pence. That's all I got to say. He's going to make Ronald Reagan look like Abby Hoffman.
Okay, Juan, do you think that there is any overreach in terms of raiding the president's personal attorney's house and office and hotel room?
No, but if there is, it would be a tremendous act of indiscretion, as we just heard Kimberly describe it, I thought, quite accurately. But I ask all of you to consider for a moment that, in fact, the people who approved this, Jesse, are all Republicans. Right. We're talking about the FBI Director, Christopher Wray. We're talking about Rod Rosenstein, who's the Trump appointee as the Deputy Attorney General. We're talking about Jeffrey Berman, who's the U.S. Attorney in New York. They all had to approve of this step of the FBI going in to Cohen's hotel room,
Berman
office,
recuse?
and office.
I think he might have recused.
No, I don't know, but I don't know that for a fact. But what I do know is this, that Trump, in essence, brought this on himself. So we can talk about, people who hate Trump and all that, but it was President Trump who said last week that he knew nothing about the payment of money by Michael Cohen, technically his lawyer, some people say is his fixer, to this woman, Stephanie Clifford Stormy Daniels. Then it turns out that once he says that, there is no lawyer-client privilege, because if that's the case, he's not representing the President of the United States. And the President of the United States is now in a position where he's either lying about not knowing about this money, or there's some secret benefactor who has given money for this and therefore has leverage to potentially blackmail the President of the United States, which is why I think it has set off alarms, not only in the law enforcement community, but nationwide.
Okay, let's talk about Rosenstein, because you said that he's a Republican and a lot of Republicans approve this. He does have some conflicts. We know the president mentioned those during his tweet storm, as they like to say. I mean, he's overseeing an investigation of obstruction of justice over the firing of James Comey, and he was the one that authored the letter recommending the firing of James Comey, and then he was the one who appointed Mueller. He also signed off on all the surveillance warrants. And now it's his own department that's stonewalling Congress to find out the documentation about the warrants. So, and now he's overseeing this entire investigation. It just seems like when you look at the way Hillary was treated, and then you look at the conflicts that Rosenstein has, President feels like he's being unfairly treated here, Kimberly,
Yeah.
and rules apply to other people that don't apply to him and vice versa.
Well, he's been, quite vocal and transparent about his upset and the fact that he thinks that this was unfair, that this investigation was supposed to be about one thing, but now it seems to be very personal in a way to try to unseat the American president, duly elected. And that's what a lot of people are going to feel very strongly about across the country. You've seen some of the reaction about it, and Greg has touched on this point. But now he's faced with another decision, which is he's upset about it.
Right.
But it is an ongoing investigation. What does he do about it? What is he legally able to do, what is within his rights, and what is politically smart for him to do? Because there's some decisions here that would be a problem for him if he were to fire Mueller. Okay. Then there's also the option, which has been widely discussed over the last 24 hours, as to whether or not he should remove Rosenstein due to some, conflicts of interest that have presented across the board here in terms of some of the investigation. There's tie-ins to Comey, to Mueller. What's going on here? Should there be another special counsel assigned to investigate that, whether or not there was any kind of underhanded things going on or some collusion there in terms of a concerted effort? We don't know. But that's something that a special counsel could also take a look at. And you've seen some people talking across television and writing about that today as well. I think the president's going to sit back for a bit here and see what happens and transpires, because I think the problem would be if he were to act hastily. It's sort of like what right now, okay, we're circling, seeing what we're going to do about Syria. He's circling, seeing what he's going to do about this situation here.
And I think if he starts firing Mueller,
right,
you got Republicans today, beginning with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, saying, don't do that.
Well, I get the sense that people in the Senate want him to fire Mueller.
No.
They've been goading the president to fire Mueller for quite some time.
I think to the contrary.
Democrats.
Not Mitch McConnell.
Not Mitch McConnell, but I feel like the rest of the senators and members of Congress have been daring the president to do that, especially the media.
I was going to, just to reiterate what Dana just said, I think you could make the case that there's some Democrats who see him stepping in a bucket if he was to do that, but you have Republicans, Jesse, lining up and saying, don't do that. That would be the end of your president. We will not back you. There are lots of Democrats who feel that people like Paul Ryan, who made the big announcement today, have been totally spineless in the face of a guy who's anti-immigration, who's blown up the budget, who doesn't believe in trade. But they have backed Trump. But on this one, they're saying don't touch Mueller.
Lindsey Graham and people are saying not to do it.
I am just trying to step back and look at the long term here, because all the people that are involved in this do not have a plan. They are barreling towards this impeachment nirvana, and they have nothing after that. And the point is, Donald Trump is not a normal politician that you can nail on affairs or on sex. You're taking out the most disruptive political outsider that I've seen in my history, whether you like him or not. That's what he is. He is not a traditional politician. So if you take him out in a manner in which feels like cheap or seedy or a coup or unjust, because it's about sex that happened before, you're going to have half the country going like, okay, you took the biggest threat that we have ever seen in our political lifetimes out over a roll in the hay.
But I don't
Civil War.
I don't see how President Trump is actually in trouble in any way about Stormy Daniels, to your point. I think Michael Cohen could possibly be because of that decision, but I don't see it actually bearing any problems for President Trump, except for possibly PR. But you can't impeach somebody for that.
I would.
I know that they don't like him.
No, you know what? I probably conflated two things. What I've been reading is that they're hoping for such a wave of Democrats that they will do the impeachment.
Right, but it's not going to be because of Stormy Daniels and sex and things. I think I don't think that's a problem for him legally.
To your point, it's interesting because unless the president had already prior gone in and made statements and was interviewed by Mueller, and there were perhaps inconsistent statements, false statements, anything like that, by which then they could, impeach him with materials that were found, obtained, and there'll be legal battles over whether any of that can be, introduced or used as well. Was it lawfully obtained? So this is, not going to, sad to say, it's not going to end quickly.
No, I think it's safe to say the president will not be sitting down with the special counsel's office after the raid.
Not anymore.